Leviticus, Leviticus chapter 7, and I'm ready for verse 11. And again, if I got it wrong, let me know and we'll move on.
Sam, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Someone was talking here. What are your plans for the summer here?
That's a good question. So I would really like to see us get through the end of chapter 9 for sure, and maybe through chapter 10 before we break. It was our plan. I don't know what the plan is, right? Last summer we broke at the right before Memorial Weekend, and then we broke for the summer. I don't know exactly when we'll pick it back up, but because of like the Thursday night concerts and a lot of you all are involved and stuff around that, we'll take a break. There has been discussion about trying to do maybe a Sunday afternoon, the chosen Bible study. But I don't know if we'll do that Sunday or what night we'll do that. That's kind of just maybe a fill-in thing here or there. But we will not meet for certain June, July, August. So that saddens me to say that because we'll be in the middle of a book yet again, ready to finish it up. But I just know that once we get to like chapter 10 kind of is a hinge point, so that'd be a good place to at least get through there. Any other questions before we get started? Let's dive in. 11 through 18. And this is the law of sacrifice of peace offerings that one may offer to the Lord. If he offers it for a thanksgiving, then he shall offer with the thanksgiving sacrifice unleavened loaves mixed with oil, unleavened wafers smeared with oil, and loaves of fine flour well mixed. With the sacrifice of his peace offering for thanksgiving, he shall bring his offering with loaves of unleavened bread. And from it he shall offer one loaf from each offering as a gift to the Lord. It shall belong to the priest who throws the blood of the peace offering. And the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering for thanksgiving shall be eaten on the day of his sacrifice. He shall not leave any of it until the morning. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow offering or a freewill offering, it shall be eaten on the day that he offers his sacrifice, and on the next day what remains of it shall be eaten. But what remains of the flesh of the sacrifice on the third day shall be burned up with fire. If any of the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering is eaten on the third day, he who offers it shall not be accepted, neither shall it be credited to him. It is tainted, and he who eats of it shall bear his iniquity. So what do you think? What do you notice?
On chapter 16, read that first part again, please.
Verse 16?
Yeah.
But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow or a freewill offering, it shall be eaten on the day that he offers his sacrifice, and on the next day what remains of it shall be eaten.
Mine says if the sacrifice of his offering is a votive or a free will offering, and I still don't understand either word, a vow or a votive.
So this is an offering that is being offered because you made a vow to God and you have completed whatever that vow required. So, prime example I'm thinking of is like the vow of a Nazarene. You take the vow of a Nazarite for a period of time, a season of time. That vow requires that you didn't cut your hair. That vow requires that you didn't drink alcohol. The vow required some activities that you had to do, and you might do that as because God had given you a big blessing, and you said, "I'm going to give you this." At the end of that vow, then you would go, you'd offer this sacrifice, and then you'd cut your hair, and then you could go back to your regular. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What other questions do you find yourself asking?
Well, 18, it talks, says, if anything to eat after the third day. Does that mean the meat's not worthy to eat after third day, or?
So my gut is first day, everything's good. Second day, everything's still good. Third day, it's spoiled, don't eat. With the exception though, notice there are three different kinds of offerings being talked about here. There's a standard peace offering, then there's the vow offering and the Thanksgiving offering. Vow offerings and Thanksgiving offerings, you're supposed to eat those first day or the second day. They're fine. But if it's a peace offering, it's only meant to be eaten on that day. And I think that my gut tells me the reason for that is a peace offering means that something has gone wrong, and me and the person with whom I'm wronged have come together to offer this peace offering. Lord, bless this relationship. And if we don't eat it all then symbolically we're kind of saying, maybe it's not done. You get what I'm saying? And so for that offering in particular, whatever's not eaten on the day that it's offered, then the rest of it should be burned. So that if everything in that relationship that is being brought back to holiness is either consumed by the two parties or it's given up to God. The other two are more celebration. And as a celebration offering, well, hey, the celebration goes well beyond today, right? And so we can celebrate with it tomorrow as well. Does that make sense? It's more the symbolism of what it's being done and not necessarily that the offering offered as a peace offering is going to spoil the second day, though without refrigeration, anything is spoiled the third day. Does that make sense? Kind of, maybe.
It's interesting how at the end of 18, it says the third day should not be accepted, should not be included to him, who shall be an abomination to him who offers it. And then it says, and the person who eats it shall bear guilt. But what if the person who eats it didn't even know it was a third day food? And what kind of guilt is going to bear?
So my immediate reaction in reading that is, have you ever eaten food that's not very good? Did you pay the price for it?
Aha. Yeah. Okay.
If a person all of a sudden eats food and they get sick to their stomach and then they end up spending the rest of the night in the toilet, then that makes you wonder something. I don't know that it's literally saying that that person is going to be guilty of something. But that if something bad happens after it, you ate bad meat, you don't eat bad meat. I mean, there's a pragmatic side of that, not just the. God's kind of, in a way, I feel like God's trying to train you. Understand you this isn't going to last forever. So remember, his promise to them was if they follow these laws, they would not get sick, they would not die young, they would not have their wives would not miscarry, you know. So there's just some pragmatics to it. That if you're gonna try and make this meat last the whole week, you know, you're gonna pay a price. The other side of that is if the person is trying to make their peace offering go. Let's have an interesting discussion. You might know somebody who had big reasons to celebrate, and they wanted everybody to know that they had reasons. They wanted to make a big deal out of it. And when everybody's like, okay, yeah, we're done celebrating, let's move on. They're like, no, it's time to celebrate. You know the kind of people I'm talking about. I think there's a sense in which more than likely, most of the offerings that should be offered are in this category. Okay? I mean, if they're healthy, and if they're doing what God told them to do, right, they shouldn't be committing a whole bunch of sins that need the other offerings, right? But this one, where it's about God is restoring things, this one where it's about we want to thank God, we want to celebrate God's goodness, in theory, this should be the one that you have the most of, right? And with this being the one that everyone gets to participate in, I'm thinking about what we talked about a couple weeks ago, where the wealthy and the powerful are supposed to go first. I'm going to bring this cow, and everybody gets to eat off of my cow because I'm thanking God. Aren't you glad you got this good beef meal? Here, would you like a T-bone? How about another T-bone? Everybody be happy. We've got T-bones for everyone. You start to get the picture? And if they're using this as a way of saying, look at how generous I am. My party goes on to the third, fourth kind of thing. Do you get what I'm saying? We can all celebrate when God does something. We should all celebrate together. But there's a difference between celebrating God's goodness and saying, look at how blessed I am. You get what I'm getting at? Yes. Now, the only caveat to that I have is think of in John's gospel, the wedding feast. The wedding in Cana, when the party's going on and they run out, right? And there's a sense in which this is a major social faux pas to have underestimated how much wine is. And Jesus gives them more and even better wine than what they have. So on the one hand, you have this extreme where some people, and we all know the type, who everyone needs to know just how well off I am. And aren't you happy that I'm well off and I'm sharing my blessings? Versus those who don't have enough and God provides. You get that contrast I'm trying to. Realistically, because when you go up to the tabernacle, especially, if you're someone who's going up to the tabernacle and you're going needing to seek God, and so your offering is going to be a whole burnt offering. No one gets anything out of that but God, right? But if you come, and that's an all-day affair, right? We stood in line and brought our sacrifice, and then it happened, and if nobody's offering a peace offering, well, then you're going home. Of course, God doesn't want that. And so I think that there's this notion that, yes, we celebrate, yes, we're grateful for what God has done, but don't ever make it about me. Does that make sense? I mean, I guess if you really wanted to make it about you, you can bring another offering 2 days later, but that gets really expensive really quick. And I would venture to say that people would see through that.
We're not getting things worked out for celebration.
This is very true. Any other questions or thoughts? Next paragraph, then. 19 through 21. Flesh that touches any unclean thing shall not be eaten. It shall be burned up with fire. All who are clean may eat flesh, but the person who eats of the flesh of the sacrifice, the Lord's peace offering, while an uncleanness is on him, that person shall be cut off from his people. And if anyone touches an unclean thing, whether human uncleanness or an unclean beast or any unclean, detestable creature, and then eats some of the flesh from the sacrifice of the Lord's peace offering, that person shall be cut off from his feet.
How do they know it's the sheep?
Some things are easy to tell. What? Like throwing up, that's pretty easy to tell. But what a person did before they came to the tabernacle, it's not always easy to tell.
Well, the piece fell on the ground, that's not, I mean, 5 second rule does not apply.
Does not apply.
How do you know when the meat's unclean?
Trying. What I think this rule is applied to, let me be very clear. I think that this rule is talking about somebody who would intentionally bring uncleanness in order that it might do harm to others.
What's the intent?
It's the intent. They're coming. Well, my uncleanness isn't that big of a deal. And if I touched a dead body and it had a disease, and now that disease is on my hand, and I touch cooked meat, and then I eat some for myself, it's one thing if I get myself sick, something else if I get everybody else who get off the things. Because remember, they're not eating with forks and knives. They're more than like, if they have knives, the knives are just used to cut off the meat. They're eating it with their hands. They're-
Sitting on the ground.
This is a picnic area with all kinds of people.
So my question is, I'm kind of still stuck on the, God gave us all these laws and to keep people safe and whatnot. And I kind of was looking over the modern equivalent, like now we have drinkers.
Yeah,
And we progress. So we're looking at more like intense, so like versus
I think,
will be less.
so yeah, I think much more of this today comes to the intent of what's going on. I think the intent was an important thing back then, but as you said, they didn't have refrigeration. So it's part of this is keeping the people well. Man, the immediate thought I can think of the moment you said that is, bless you. Well, that's a good example. We always tell kids, sneeze into your elbow, cover your hand, cover your mouth when you cough, these kind of things. On the one hand, is that really necessary? Oh, no. But we teach them that because in theory, it helps them understand that those things can spread to other people, right? Thus, like I said, my immediate thought was going to go to you could say whether or not it was an overuse or an abuse, but the COVID season. There is a sense in which there was some wisdom to having people mask. There's a basic level of wisdom. Is it going to protect you against everything? No. Can't. Unless you're getting the really expensive medical ones, there's stuff that gets through. And the cloth ones that you made yourself, if it's all you got, it's better than nothing. And again, it was that intent. We're trying to say, we're trying to show kindness. We're trying to make sure that if we have it, we're not spreading. I heard a lot of people say, my mask is less about me and more about me. It's more about me trying to show you that I care and not spread anything that I may have to you. Within Asian culture, it's very normal during flu season to see 2/3 of the population wearing masks while they're out. There's a sense in which it's being kind. It's an intent of saying, on the one hand, I don't want to give anything, but if I've got something, I don't want to give it to you. That's very different from the intent of saying, I don't know if I have anything, but I don't care. Does that make sense? And so I think a law like this is in place to cause people to think, what have you done? And are you unintentionally bringing harm on others? Like one of the key things we say is, wash your hands. If you just wash your hands regularly, that's going to cause most illnesses to not be transferred from person to person. Right? You're out in the garden, if you're outside, messing in the dirt, wash your hands before you. You know, if you're doing a nasty job, wash your hands before you eat. And definitely wash your hands before you serve food to other people. Right? That's the kind of concept I think is going on here. To a certain degree, is be respectful of each other. Make sure that you're not unintentionally doing harm to someone else. And definitely don't do it on purpose. Does that make sense? Because again, this whole system is less about the sacrifices and more about creating a culture where the community is truly safe with one another, where we truly lift each other up, where we truly seek the betterment of our brothers and sisters, where sins are dealt with and shame and guilt are not heaped on us, but instead we're allowed to get rid of it, right? And so how bad would it be if you go and you come with a pure motive to seek forgiveness from God, and then you walk away from the temple, the tabernacle, and you come down sick the next day? Are you going to think that God forgave you? Or are you going to wonder what's happening? Don't inadvertently be a stumbling block to others.
I know I've said this plenty of times, but I think this is just so foreign to us, because there's accountability here, and I really don't have it anyway.
We are so used to not having accountability that even this, which to a certain degree sounds like an overreach of accountability. Yet I can think of at least one time when I was a kid where I walked into the bathroom, went to the bathroom, and said, wash your hands. And I'm like, I'm not going to do what they told me to do. I just walked right back out. Yeah, I probably didn't get anybody sick, and it probably wasn't a big deal, but that's a horrible attitude, right? This is, I mean, so think about it, and like what you're saying there. Think about Jesus' commands. Love one another. All of the law and the prophets can be boiled down to that statement. Love one another. If you love the people around you, are you going to do anything that would cause them harm?
James, that's where we are.
We just read 19 through 21 of Leviticus chapter 7.
You know, Sam, a lot of us don't even realize how we're able to spread things. Very simple. You do this, then you, hi, how you doing? It's all right there in your hand. You don't think about those kind of things.
And this system is causing us, you should start thinking more about what we're doing and what the implications are.
What are you doing in the restaurant? Your bathroom sign, or employees, or your name, or your okay, that means. So the guy just goes to the bathroom and just walk out the door. That's it.
There is a sense in which, yes, that call to wash your hands isn't just for the employees, though they better. Because this is saying right here, if you inadvertently cause uncleanness to spread, you are doing harm to your brothers and sisters in Christ, or in this case, within the kingdom of Israel.
Well, I think what Gary said, is very true. If you don't find when you people go to the restaurant, I think it's probably more so in men.
heard on the radio the other day that the most, dirty thing that there is a cell phone. Because everybody goes to the bathroom and uses their cell phone. I heard that on the radio, I go, you know what, there's a lot of truth with that.
I don't know about ladies' rooms, but a lot of men's restrooms are starting to add, there's a little thing down.
Yes.
You pull with your foot, or they've got the arm bar, where you can slide your arm up and pull, open it that way. If those are options, I always use them.
There's a trash can right beside the door.
Wag your hand, take it, grab, then throw it away, and just slide out the door. Now, to a certain degree, then, we joke about that, and there's a sense in which it sounds silly, but we understand intrinsically that there are bacteria and germs that you can pick up anywhere. And so there's a sermon series Melissa wants me to preach eventually, but we've got to get enough of the topics to make it work. And she wants to call it the misquote me series, the things that people say are in the Bible that aren't biblical. One of the key, God helps those who help themselves. That's not biblical. That's not biblical. Now, there's some principles behind it that are moderately biblical, but as a whole, God helps anyone who's willing to call out, right? Period. The one that most gets me is cleanliness is next to godliness. There is nothing about that description. You couldn't pull that out if you wanted to.
There's gotta be history to that, because every little thing. Here's an example, again, teacher. I teach Indians, right, names, okay, one that cracked me up was a training back dog. And the history behind that is that people's roofs used to be like a thatch, grasses, and their animals would go up there for shelter. And when they would have storms, they would come through the roof. So it was literally raining cats and dogs.
Did not know that. But I think if we look at something like this, we can see where a principle like that might evolve. That we are meant to be clean. We are meant to be as clean as possible while we are in the presence of God, so that we're not spreading uncleanness to those around us. And so cleanliness is next to godliness is a principle of how we interact with each other. I could pull that from this passage, but for those who haven't been on the journey with us through this, I'd have to do a lot of dancing to get there, right? Yeah. Krista already pointed out how much I dance with the preschoolers. That's all you're getting. But I can see where they might play with that. And I can even kind of now say, there's a sense in which there's a level of truth with it. But would they be able to know about cleanliness to the level of what we know? No.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, God was teaching them before anybody knew anything about germs and all of that.
Oh, absolutely. As I go back and I read this law, and I think of it under the guise of what he promised, what we know now about germs and bacteria and sickness and how things are transmitted and all of these things, he's giving them a way around it. Now, to us, it feels like it's overly legalistic. I mean, this seems like it's going a little bit over, right? But it's that intent piece. God's trying to teach them. They've been slaves pretty much all of their lives. They've been dictated what they were supposed to do. And they probably didn't have time to wash their hands before they ate. You know, if you, or the means. Right.
To get water, it would have to be raw. Depending on waters.
Right. And so there's so many aspects of their life that they don't understand this stuff. they would have no means. These are they're generations of slaves.
But they had a form of soap at that time. I'm not sure when they finally figured out how to do that.
Probably,
Ashes and oils and stuff back.
probably not. I don't know when lye soap really came to existence, but
I think that perfume, so.
they had perfumes, absolutely, but all, right.
So,
They had perfumes. I don't know that they had soaps. They would have perfumes to cover up smells, but not necessarily soaps to take away smells. And so,
Depends on what the water source was. You wash your hand in the water, get down in the water again.
and of course, we know that now too. But the other side of that is again, God is teaching them cleanliness principles. Yeah, in today's day where we have sanitizers and alcohol-based things and bleach-based cleaners to get rid of all kinds of stuff, we don't think about this. And maybe most of this is a moot point for us. But the intent side of it is still absolute. You treat the others as if they are someone that you want to keep well, or you treat others as if they're not worthy of you keeping well. Are you really your brother's keeper? Are you really your sister's keeper or not? And of course, in God's economy, he even tells them they're a kingdom of priests. So it doesn't even matter if you're dealing with a non-Israelite as a priest, are you supposed to treat anyone different who comes to you needing help? No. Every single person who comes to the church should be treated equally, right? That's one of the things we've been taught. They are the priests on God's behalf to all of the world. And so therefore, this principle, it doesn't just apply to their cousins and their brothers and their sisters and their parents and their kids. It doesn't just apply to their clan, those extended families. It doesn't just apply to their people. Because truly, as we discovered, Israel is open to anyone who come. And everyone is meant to be treated equally and with a level of respect.
Today, with the situation the way it is, people sometimes become overzealous with cleanliness. And they are finding that a lot of kids who have grown up in homes where mom is paranoid about germs and dirt and everything, that she tries to keep them as clean as possible away from people and so on and so forth. Those kids are not as resistant to diseases as kids that are out playing in the dirt.
And I think that probably goes beyond what God is doing here. There was no ability for them to be that kind of running back.
I'm just saying that today's world,
Yes.
we've made too far.
Google, this is evidence has been found that ancient Babylonians understood soapmaking as early as 2800 BC.
Really?
Architects have found soap-like material in historic clay cylinders from this time. These cylinders were described with what we understand as past, boiled with ashes. And that doesn't make any sense.
So they could have asked. Again, this is a nation of slaves, so whether or not they got to bring soap with them is a question. But it was
I would think they didn't have been introduced.
very well might not have. Any other thoughts? Next paragraph. 22 through 27. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, you shall eat no fat of ox or sheep or goat. The fat of an animal that dies of itself and the fat of the one that is torn by beasts may be put to any other use, but on no account shall you eat it. For every person who eats the fat of an animal of which a food offering may be made to the Lord shall be cut off from his feeding. Moreover, you shall eat no blood whatever, whether of fowl or of animal in any of your dwelling places. Whoever eats any blood, that person shall be cut off from his feeding.
If they do that once, they're cut off from the people. Does that mean that they cannot come back ever? Or they're just no longer part of the body? What's that mean?
This is the terminology that's meant to be used for what we call excommunication. We don't know that. But it's saying that this is an egregious enough offense that you cannot stay apart. But it's not so egregious that you have to be stoned. Think about that for just a second. You don't lose your life, but you're cast out. People who are cast out, once they confess their sins, can come back in. Do you get what I'm saying there? I don't know if you could confess your sin immediately and just come right back in the same day. I highly doubt it. But this is saying that this is important enough that we don't let anybody do it, that we're going to completely set that person out of our midst. And then they must basically reconvert to the faith.
There's another intent. So to confess your sin, your intent is pure, I guess, is what you say. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
But if you just do it to be able to come back in, or the result, your conscious maybe,
Right.
then your intent is not.
So then do they have to have another sacrifice to be burnt on the altar and forgiving them?
They would have to bring a sin offering.
Then
They would have to probably, I would say more than likely, they'd probably have to spend at least a week excommunicated. Go to your room and think about what you've done. And once you've come to a contrite heart, not just, hey, Mom, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. But genuinely, you are contrite of your heart. Then you have to bring sin offering back. You would have to be restored. The priest would have to see your intent and accept that sin offering as a genuine admission of guilt. And then you could be restored. You probably have to have a sin offering and a peace offering because you've been separated from the body by all the time.
This part where it says that they should not eat the fat of an offering, the animal fat, but it doesn't say that at other times they can't eat.
They were never to eat the fat. And they were never to eat the blood.
On the offering, it says.
Period. Of any animal.
What's the fat issue there?
So part of it is, on the one hand, we're talking about health issues, right? We know that is there really much health value to that? There's flavor value, but is there health value?
We got to play it.
That way. So,
And turn off most of the fat, absolutely. Because other than the flavor that it adds to the meat, it does not help in any kind of good kind of calorie. It doesn't give you protein. It's not necessarily bad for you, but it's not good for you.
The blood of the other hand, that can carry disease.
Both fat and blood can carry disease. But also culturally speaking, at this point in time in human history, the notion of consuming blood was you're taking the life force from that creature into you. And therefore you might be extending your life. By the same token, an animal that's fat is mostly considered healthy. They are well fed, they're well cared for. So by consuming that fat, people this time thought they were taking in the health of that animal.
So maybe blood, I mean, how do you prepare the meat? The rare, medium rare, well done, or is it something like? As you're butchering the bloods. Offered.
So I would say blood cheese is completely off the market. Blood sausage is completely off. When they're literally taking the blood and using it in the food, that's absolutely illegal. Technically, a good steak that's cooked medium rare, what comes out of it, even though it's red, it's not actually blood. It's meat juices that are red colored, the protein. So that's not what it's talking about. And in theory, the way it was described in previous chapters, when they killed the animal, they were to drain all of the blood out before it was put on the altar. And if they drain all of the blood out, it may not be 100% of the blood, but whatever is left is going to be cooked. It's not something that's going to carry enough of the disease or the illness. The intent in this is to understand that the health and the life that these animals might have to offer is not something that we are to take in and of ourselves, that our health and our life come from Him. When by following His rules. Does that make sense? What you thinking over there?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I had a grandfather that was a butcher, and he said there wasn't a good piece of meat if it didn't have a little fat. For the flavor.
For the flavor.
For the flavor.
I mean, to a certain degree, you don't want to cut all of it off. But by the same token, we've also been countless nutritionists have said you're better off. You could cook it with it on there, but then you'll probably have to cut it off. Yeah. And of course, I was taught, no, you eat it with.
Well, that's good.
You know, that's so funny. My father, he would eat everything. And he would say, that's the white meat. Steak. And they eat it, it's the white. And, you know, I couldn't do it. I would take it somewhere else.
Give it to the dog.
If we eat liver, well, on 99.
But it's funny what brings us back.
So I think to your point, we need to understand part of that is we need to teach people that we understand that once you bring it to a certain temperature, the meat, it kills all the bacteria that's in it. And that's all you're really trying to do when you cook something. You're going to make sure that it comes to, because in reality, other than the fact that it creates a different flavor profile, uncooked meat versus cooked meat has very little nutritional value difference. We're just used to, in our culture, not eating anything that's uncooked. But throughout most of the world, where they don't have the kitchens and the things we have, it's not uncommon for them to eat things raw. Oysters raw, fish raw, tartare, which is an uncooked meat product, but that's just not normal for us. Sushi.
So we're not supposed to eat fat, we can never eat bacon.
That's pork period. That's why we're not Jews. Though as I say that, my immediate reaction is I remember when I was in seminary one year, I gave up pork. I love pork chops, I like sausage, bacon. I can handle ham. I usually have ham about once or twice a year, usually at Easter. But that's enough for me. But that year that I gave up pork was probably the time period in seminary where I thought the clear study. And that pork tastes good, but it's sluggish on your mind. I don't know why. I just think, what?
It was my baby this morning.
I can take you to the turkey bacon, and once you've seen how it's made, you know.
That's like hot. You don't see them.
So on the one hand, again, if this makes me think of like what Paul says, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. We can eat the fat. There's nothing that says in our Christian world that says we shouldn't, we can't. But that doesn't mean that just because we can, that's necessarily good for us to use. I mean, there are people who enjoy eating pufferfish. It's poisonous. And if it doesn't kill you, then okay, I guess. But, you know, there's just a point of why. You know, I had it once growing up as a kid, and down in southwestern Indiana, they're known as the brain eaters. You know, pig brains. You batter, fry it up, and put on a sandwich. Sell them at the sign up club. It's a big deal. I had it once. The only thing I tasted was the batter that it was fried in. If you're gonna give me that, then give me the pork chop instead of the pig brain.
You know, what's worse than that, low peanuts.
I just can't even, we've been through Georgia, I can't tell you how many times, I just can't bring myself to even try a boiled peanut.
I did that once, and I'll do the last.
So to a certain degree, I get where there are time periods in human history, especially within our own corporate history of the last couple hundred years, where they wanted to make the best use of every part of the animal at all possible. And to a certain degree, I get that. But God is saying, trust me, you're going to be better off if you just do. There are some things you just shouldn't. Kidneys, long over the liver, most of the fat, just give it to me. Just treat it as my heart. You're doing me a favor by giving me that part, and I'm saving you a lot of grief by you not eating. Christian's not here to argue with me about that. What?
I love it.
You love liver too?
Maybe once a month, maybe.
Once every 5 to 10 years, maybe. Maybe. What else do you notice? So we discussed about the notion of excommunication. It feels like such a harsh word, but the reality is God is saying, don't let people do this and teach you that it's okay for you to do it. Because then when you get sick, who are you going to blame? People blame God when they get sick, right? God, why did you let this happen?
Or they blame each other, they riot.
Or they blame each other and they riot and fight. It starts feuds and wars. So it's better that a person who refuses to have good intent be set aside for a while until they're willing to be contracted to come back, than to allow the whole body to believe that it's okay to dismiss the whole period. That's just a little white lie, right? That's just a little word. And just a little bit more fat. 20 years later, you got 100 pounds you need to get rid of that you can't get rid of.
And drink Bloody Mary.
Not sick. Next paragraph. 28 through 36. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel, saying, whoever offers the sacrifice of his peace offering to the Lord shall bring his offering to the Lord from the sacrifice of his peace offering. His own hands shall bring the Lord's food offering. He shall bring the fat with the breast, that the breast may be weighed as a wave offering before the Lord. The priest shall burn the fat on the altar, but the breast shall be for Aaron and his sons. And the right thigh you shall give to the priest as a contribution from the sacrifice of your peace offering. Whoever among the sons of Aaron offers the blood of the peace offering, and the fat shall have the right thigh for a portion. For the breast that is weighed and the thigh that is contributed, I have taken from the people of Israel out of the sacrifices of their peace offerings, and have given them to Aaron the priest and his sons as a perpetual due from the people of Israel. This is the portion of Aaron and of his sons from the Lord's food offering, from the day they were presented to serve as priests of the Lord. The Lord commanded this to be given them by the people of Israel from the day that he atoned them. It is a perpetual due throughout their generations. Thoughts? Questions?
Why the right thigh?
So the right thigh is symbolic of going back to Jacob. When Jacob wrestled with God. Or as we discovered, God wrestled with Jacob and pinned him to the ground and said, you're not going nowhere. When Jacob refused, God dislocated his right thigh. So that right hand was always given to the priests. Waving is just a gesture. So no state card. Well, technically gone, yes, no state card. But that's not normal within our culture. But there's a difference between what you eat at home and what you're bringing as a sacrifice. You can have steak tartare if you invite enough people over to eat a whole cow in one day. That's a lot of steak tartare. The wave offering is acknowledging that out of this peace offering, remember the peace offering is about bringing two things back together. And that the peace offering was to be shared amongst the body. So out of that peace offering, the right thigh and a breast of the animal was given over to Aaron and his family for their sustenance, for their service to God. It's acknowledging that even though we're doing this for us to come together, we're also acknowledging that a part of this is us being made right with God as well. That is, I'm made right with Dean after our feud is over. Now we are being made right with God as we're being made right. So, does that make sense? God, this is yours, this is theirs. Okay, there you go, Aaron. Everybody else gets to do this. Any other thoughts or questions?
Ours says, 35, it says this is a portion from the fire offering.
Now that you got confused.
Mine says offering of the Lord.
So 7. Verse 35. Let's see what the Hebrew says.
Fire offerings to the Lord.
This anointed portion of Aaron and the anointed portion of the sons of him from the fire offerings of Yahweh. And the day he is brought near them to the priests of Yahweh. Maash. From fire. Okay, let's see. At the top of the chapter. It's a guilt offering. It was verse 11, right? The start of the peace offering. But that's interesting. I'm gonna have to ask Daniel about that. Because that's an absolutely different word. A fire offering. So it sounds like my translation is just trying to call it a food offering. Just, as I'm thinking through what all we've read of late, both in here and in our daily readings, there's a part of me that wonders if this isn't saying that any food that is cooked on the fire, that a portion of it is given. That's not a whole burnt offering. So it's an offering of any of the other 4 kinds other than the whole burnt. That'd be my gut reaction, but I'm gonna ask. So essentially, of every single offering that's offered on the fire, it's not a whole burnt offering, 8 breast and the right thigh are given over to Aaron and the priest as their portion. That's my gut. I might do my math wrong there too. Any other thoughts or questions? Next paragraph, finish the chapter. Woo-hoo. 37 and 38. This is the law of the burnt offering of the grain, or of the burnt offering, of the grain offering, of the sin offering, of the guilt offering, of the ordination offering, and of the peace offering, which the Lord commanded Moses on Mount Sinai on the day that he commanded the people of Israel to bring their offerings to the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai. So everything we receive goes all the way back to Exodus 20, verse 22. All of everything we've received, the end of Exodus and the beginning of Leviticus, was all received by Moses on Mount Sinai after they say, whoa, 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 God, don't go talking to us, you're too private. Go talk to Moses, and let Moses talk.
That's more than 2,000.
A little bit more than 2,000. Or the writing was very, very fine. You need a magnifying glass to read it. It's the fine print. Is it weird to think of all of this being, when we think of the 10 Commandments, we think of those 10 things. And that's all we really think of being the law, right? Is it different to think of all of this that we've received, that's this point, as being the law? What's that mean to you as we've been coming along with this? Law part 2. The law part 2.
Not attainable.
It's not obtainable.
I mean, almost impossible.
Of our own accord and our own abilities, it's not possible. And we see them time and time again fall flat. By the same token, as much as I absolutely agree with you, all I can keep thinking of is what you keep saying, that if we did do this, and we all actually said we're going to do this, and we all did it together, and we helped each other to do it, how different our culture would be. How different our society would be.
I was just sitting here thinking, these are our laws, ordinances, whatever you want to call them. We have one say, but don't we, as people, can choose which one to follow? We still do that.
We absolutely.
I mean, most people think speed limit is a guideline.
I mean, the state cop told me, if you got at least eight, you got at least 8 mile an hour, right? That's what he told me 28 years ago. It might be a 10 or 12 mile an hour, but that,
Yeah, it's flexible now.
he's comfortable now, inflation, that's right.
Just a lot of flow.
Go with the flow track. Now, have I told you this? When we were in college at Vincent University, and a buddy of ours lived in Beach Grove, we drove 41 and I-70. I-70 from Terre Haute to Indianapolis on a Friday night is crazy. There were 3 cars. We were in a caravan, and we every so often, would leave close, so someone else was in the. And one of the cars, we were going with the flow of traffic at 92 mile an hour. And the last car got pulled over. The last car of our three car carrier. And he was told, this is going to sound dumb, but you need to speed up. Because I cannot pull over every car that's going 100 mile an hour. You're actually impeding traffic. You are becoming a danger to the rest of the flow of traffic. How often do you drive I-70 from Terre Haute to Indianapolis on a Friday night?
We did improve the traffic sometime, and I look at the speedometer, and Jim says, I'm going with the traffic.
We just figured out a way to block that so she couldn't see it.
Yeah, but let's think about that for just a little bit, based on what you just said. Why are speed limits put there? To protect us from ourselves.
And because we live in a society, you have to do things that function as a group, not as individuals.
Correct. As a society, one person is not autonomous. As much as our culture, we want to say, I am my own individual, whatever I do only affects me, and I have my own truth, and it doesn't matter what you say, I am me, you are you, there is no me. That's not true. Speed limits are put there partially to save us from ourselves, and partially to keep everybody else.
When I was a kid, the speed limit was 65.
That's
You
very
know,
helpful.
the highway. They brought it to 55, not for to save ourselves, but theoretically to save.
Yeah.
You guys are too young to know that.
Well, I'm cracking up what Melissa said, the speed limit, when you said was higher back then, those were pedal cars, she said. You can get your pedals going that far fast, then go for it. Now, there is an interesting reality that I have found. Now the cars are smart and they track your mileage, what your miles per gallon is. I found that we get the best mileage between 55 and 60. You start going over that, you start dropping fast. You're going lower than that, the engine's revving so much that it doesn't really get good mileage. And so on the one hand, and I've been told by countless people, unless you're going 500 miles, going that extra 8 mile an hour over the speed limit really isn't going to get you there any faster.
I take the whole 500 gallon miles worth of gas.
Yeah, we really don't have tanks that hold that much gas. Plus, you don't want to fill up a tank with that much gas. That's a part of the problem. But there's a sense in which we treat them as suggestions, right? And to a certain degree, maybe some of the law is fluid. For instance, 65 is genuine about keeping people safe. Going from 65 to 55 is more about keeping gas use down and trying to. But then there's the other side of that is when that happened, there was a condition, right? And so therefore, it wasn't just about, there was a need to make sure that that fuel went around so that people didn't have to go. But yes, you're right, I wasn't alive in that. But I'm wondering, how did people react to that? It wasn't, oh, you know what, maybe I should conserve my driveway so that other people can have gas too, in case they need to get to the hospital.
I think that was the general thought.
Or was it, I'm gonna get my gas, and I don't care who doesn't get it.
And you could get gas on Sunday.
And again, think about this, think about what we've been talking about. Was the attitude of any of that good? We were just angry about being told what we couldn't do. We were being angry about being told that you shouldn't do this. Well, who are they to tell me what I should and shouldn't do? Who are they to tell me what I can and can't do? Instead of this kind of a notion, where all of a sudden we're saying, what should I do in a way that makes it best for everyone? Which is often why, as we've done this is our first time digging into Leviticus to this step, but we've dug into Genesis and Exodus a number of times. We have a natural tendency, and we've tried to ingrain it in our kids. If rather than going to the store every day, if you're going to the store, see if anybody needs something, right? It's a way of caring. On the one hand, it conserves resources. So you're not just spending resources for it, and also you're trying to be kind to others. Is that the way we naturally think in our culture, in our society? No, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, some of you do within your household, but do you think about that within our body?
You know, when COVID hit, yes, I hadn't done it so much before, but we're in an old group of people. And so I called a neighbor and said, we're running to we're going to the store. Do you need anything? And some would say yes, and some would say, I'm okay. So, but you're right, the thought needs to be better.
Like COVID in many ways gave us permission to reset a lot of things. We only saw about the negatives that came with us being contained. But in many ways, it gave us the opportunity to embrace a more God-honoring way of living. Care for each other.
Some people slow it down, they brought them back to the table.
Oh, absolutely. Now, part of that was, yeah, because we couldn't do anything else. But man, I was so angry when Leah had to go get the stupid COVID test in order to go back to Ball State for her last semester on campus, and she tested positive with 0 symptoms. And our entire family had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And then, of course, they wouldn't let us go ahead and just take the test. No, you got to wait 7 days. And then what happens? The boys test positive. Guess who gets punished? Those of us who don't have it. Leah gets released early. The boys get released early. We never got it, so Melissa and I actually got stuck. But that 3.5 weeks of our family all being under one house was some of the best days we had. It truly, I was angry at first. I was really concerned as a pastor, like, who's going to care for the congregation? Is anybody going to step up and do the things that need to get done? Who's going to take care of things? And I couldn't worry about it.
Yeah, same way in the blizzard of 78. That was great. Called your neighbors to see if they needed something at the store. We could make it to the store, right? And we played games at home with the kids, stuff like that.
It's,
I would have spoken.
Yeah.
I didn't get any cigarettes.
I was scheduled for duty. And I called and said, hey, I can't make it in. They said, be ready. 5 minutes, they came to 6 places. And I had somehow made it out with the front porch out of the snow and snow. And then I spent, how many days? in 12 days. And he's kind of part of it.
So I'm going to make two statements that sound completely contradictory. I don't believe that God would ever send these things and inflict them on us. I don't believe that at all. But I absolutely believe God will allow these kind of things to happen, that it might reset us and cause us to come back to the way that He wants us to. Does that make sense? Sometimes we need those kind of things to happen in our life to just rattle us enough to cause us to think, maybe this isn't good. The sad truth is most of that, our world is all but forgotten about COVID. We don't act a whole lot differently. There are some things that are a little different, but for the most part, we don't care about it.
Well, the same thing is similar with 9/11, after that, everybody was freaking praying.
For 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, churches were. And we in the church didn't know what to do about it. We didn't know what to do with all those people showing up. They just hear something bad happened. They're just gonna leave. It's what we don't treat them like, oh, you should stay. We treated them with suspicion instead of saying, no. Glad you're here where you should be. This is a foreign way of life. And yet, when you start to look at it closely, you can see where it's probably a much better way. We got 10 minutes. Do you want to? No, chapter 8 is going to have to be done. As we close out this section, how do you feel? What does it make you think of the law in this fashion?
I think there's a separate because when Diane said 4 weeks ago, what does beatitude say? So that's what Jesus was teaching us. I think there's more. And how much different is what Jesus taught us, you know, even if I think it in my mind, I'm wrong. I live it in my heart, I'm wrong.
Jesus took what was implicit in the law and he made it explicit.
Okay.
To imply something means to not really say it, but to give a foreshadow. So we've been talking about this whole thing. The one that gets me the most is the uncleanness. Don't touch something unclean and then bring your offering into God, because you're spreading that uncleanness. You're going to bring guilt on yourself. Don't do something that would inadvertently hurt someone else. Don't bring uncleanness is an implicit. Don't bring uncleanness in order to spread uncleanness. But if I say, don't you dare do something that would hurt anybody else, that's explicit. When I was a kid in junior high, my best friend, his parents would invite me over pretty regularly for my sleep. They only gave us one rule: don't burn the house down. Now, in junior high, I thought that's a pretty good rule. There's a lot of things we can get away with. I really did. Then mother gave us a scenario. And she pointed out this could lead to this, this could lead to this, this could lead to this, and next thing you know, you burn the house down. And all of a sudden, those junior high boys realized, oh crap, everything leads to burning the house down. Not just smoking. I mean, because she talked about an electric short, and then it caused an electric fire. So you're going to burn the house down. Now, she knew that we were both very imaginative in a minute, and she used that against us. In a way, I think God does the same thing. What is the number one commandment? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Okay, it's pretty easy to love, right?
Not everyone.
Sometimes, not everyone, and when you start thinking about what is the loving thing and what is the unloving thing, it gets a lot harder. It's unloving to unintentionally get someone else sick. It's really unloving to intentionally get someone else sick. Don't do it. If you have the ability to make your brother, your sister, your neighbor healthy, you should try to do that. That's the loving thing. It's not enough to just not bother. It's not enough to say, well, you know, Jim over there, he's gonna get himself in trouble. He's messing around too much. Diane's gonna kill him because he's flirting with too many women. But we're all gonna talk about it. We're gonna wait for you to show that.
He doesn't know it.
The loving thing is to try to restore our brother and keep him from going in the path to destruction. But we don't like that. One, that sounds like tattletaling. Two, it sounds like, who are you to judge me and tell me what's wrong?
You're meddling in my life.
And you're meddling in my life. But Jesus is very clearly saying, we must care for each other. Because let's just be honest, of our own accord, we're not even very good at caring for ourselves. We're not any good at doing the things that we know that we should do. One of the most confusing passages of the scripture. Paul says, that which I shouldn't do is the thing that I do. And the thing that I don't want to do is the thing that I do. And I don't want to do this, but I know that I shouldn't. And you know, I can't even quote it because it just gets tongue-tied. But we know the point of what he's saying. The things we're supposed to do. For whatever reason, there's something in us that just causes us to say, no, I'm not going to do this instead. And the things that we absolutely say, no, I don't want to do this, we end up giving into it and we do it anyway. Our human nature is broken. And what God is saying, I want to build a community where you all step in the gap for each other's brokenness, where you bring healing to each other, where you're there lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. And if you would trust me in this and you'd give it a try, and as a community, you would all agree to do this together, while it's impossible for us to do it on our own, corporately within the Spirit of God, we can absolutely do it together. But it requires that we see that that is the loving thing to do. It requires that we're willing to lay down my rights and my way for God's right and God's way, which leads to our right and our way. Does that make sense? And yeah, you're right. We read the Sermon on the Mount, and it's far more explicit. Jesus takes a lot of the iffiness of the rules out. It's not enough to just not kill your brother. We all should agree, right? It's a bad thing to kill him. It's equally bad to hate them so much in your heart that you want to kill them. And it's equally bad to just want to curse your brother in the moment, even if the next moment you want to forgive him and you want to make everything right. Because this thought can lead to this thought that can lead to this action the next thing you know, you kill your brother. So the moment you have that first thought, you've already started killing him in your heart. So cut it off then, and don't let it get any further. Excommunicate that part of your mind until it can be redeemed and brought back. I know you don't like that word, somebody use it until you.
Well, what it does say to me, okay, I know I'm human. I know that, I'm human, but I was told, I was excommunicated So now if I'm forgiven, and I know it's right, I should go back.
If you want to go back, you can.
No, no.
So there's a difference between holy, God honoring excommunication and unholy and evil excommunication. Do you hear that difference? Do you acknowledge that there might be such a thing? Holy excommunication has another word that we're going to read here probably this fall. It's called quarantine. You know what quarantine is?
Like code in your home.
It means taking something for its own good and isolating it so that the evil can run its course and the person can be made whole and be brought back into society. Do you get that concept? You're looking puzzled at me. Quarantining was not about getting rid of something completely. It was about isolating it so that it could be healed and be brought back into full right relationship. The word quarantine literally means 40 days. And it stems from the book of Leviticus, where they say, if something has this disease or this skin disorder or this mold or this mildew, you quarantine that, you set it aside, you cover it up so that the mold and the mildew will die, and it's not allowed to spread. And when you bring it back in, if it's dead, then you clean it, you restore it back to the person. And the same is true of the person. If they have a disease or an illness, you quarantine them off, give them what they need to heal, let them go through the treatment, put them in the hospital for 40 days, let them get their treatment, don't let them in society so that they can either get more sick or they can spread that sickness to everybody else. We quarantine so that they can be healed, so that they can be restored to society. That's what excommunication is supposed to be. Evil excommunication is, I don't like you, you're out, and you're dead. You're dead to me. There is no ability to be restored. And unfortunately, within the Amish community, within the Catholic community, within the Jewish community, within many other religions outside of the Christian faith or the Judeo-Christian faith, it means you're as good as dead to me. You no longer exist. That's evil. That's murdering someone in your heart. Right? But you hear the difference between the two. One is for the healing of the individual, that they might be restored. One is paramount to saying Raka to my brother. The sad truth is Christians have moved to the evil version of excommunication instead of the healing version of excommunication. Should we ever do this? Jesus says, if your brother won't be reconciled to you, treat them as a sinner and a tax collector. How does Jesus treat sinners and tax collectors? He eats with them. He eats with them. He loves them. He seeks to bring them wholeness. He doesn't treat them like an insider. He doesn't treat them as if they're safe or they're the family, but he still absolutely eats with them amongst them. The sad truth is that we've allowed excommunication to become a means of evil, a means of spiritual and familial murder, instead of it becoming a thing of healing where we think you're on a wrong track and we're just going to set you outside until you're ready to be restored.
Is there, I guess I'm not aware of a process of excommunication in churches I've attended.
Most Protestant churches don't have it. There is a process for removing someone from membership.
There is.
In the Methodist system, there's a 2-year process by which a person who is no longer in good communal faith, once a year, their name is read. And unless somebody has a reason why that person should be restored, they're continued on the list. After 2 years of their name being read, on the 3rd year, if they have not been restored, then they are treated as if they're no longer a member of the community.
Is that true in the global Methodist?
I don't think we've written that in yet, but there's a sense in which what it's there for is for the people who refuse to act in the way that the community is meant to act. What it says is, look, what we should say is when we put someone on that list, we're adding you to this list because you're no longer acting like you're one of us. We hope that you'll come back and start acting like one of us. But if you don't, you've got a 3-year time limit. And then we're just going to remove you from our roles. You're no longer one of us. Acted like you weren't one of us, now we're going to give you what you've asked.
So is it the, is it the pastors that happens to? Or is it a congregational person, personally, that happens to?
It can happen to them. Actually, as a pastor, once a year, there are pastors who are removed from the state. It has to go before the body, what they call the clergy session, a new conference. And all of the ordained clergy are part of that. They all have to agree to remove some of those credentials. To say that you have done X, therefore you are no longer part of us, and we all have to agree to remove you. Within the body, that have the charge conference, and every member of the church is invited to the charge conference. If those names are read, every member of the church can say, whoa, that person's come back. The goal is not to remove people who are actively living the life of the body. The goal is to remove people who said, we're not living. Don't remove my name, but I'm not going to come to church, and I'm not going to pray for you, and I'm not going to be involved in your services, and I'm not going to send money. But you better leave my name on the rolls.
So when I die, I can be in my obituary.
And it used to be like many churches, if they had their own graveyard, you had to be a member of the church in order to be buried in the graveyard. And you have to be a member of the church for your great grandkids to get married in the church. We want the benefits, but we don't want to act like we're a part of the community. So there is a process within process, at least within the Methodist system, but we don't use it very well. I mean, we've got 404 people on our membership list. The largest Sunday, from what I can tell, in the last 20 years, single service happened the Sunday after Easter. That was 250 people. Where's the other 150 people?
Actually, online.
I wish.
Watching online, there are.
We do have a number of our members from, and I treat them, the ones that we know are genuinely watching online, I treat them as if they're part of our church. They're doing the best that they can. Some of them should come in person. They can come in person. They've just gotten lazy and don't even admit it. But at least from my standpoint as your pastor, that's in that minimum category of what it takes to stay part of the congregation. If you can't come in person, are you at least trying to watch online? And if you're not tech savvy, sorry, you don't get that out. You better come in person. Or you better just go ahead and move it to Woodcrest, or you pipe it in every month.
So when was the last time ever deleted something from us?
Oh, churches don't like it. Because how dare you remove my name from membership? That's why I've said for us, We brought all 404 of those people over as a part of the family of our church. And this summer, we're going to talk about what I hope we're going to call being a professing partner of the church. Membership implies one thing, partnership implies something very different. Melissa and I have had membership to gyms over the years. They haven't done me a whole lot of good, because a membership that you don't live into doesn't get you. But you know, if having a gym membership actually caused me to lose weight, then I should be about 180 pounds. But if you're a partner, that's different. I like that change of terminology because a partner implies that you're invested, you're giving of yourself to make the needs of the organization move forward. Now, I'll say that from my standpoint, our shut-ins can still be partners. I have learned, I would actually feel like God's kind of called me on the carpet, that we do not take God seriously in the power of prayer. There is nothing more powerful that you can do than pray. Nothing. And I've been guilty of going into a nursing home and telling someone where they just like, oh, I don't feel like I'm worth much anymore. Well, you can pray. As if that's a toss-off thing. You can do this. No. We all should be praying. Like if you can't do anything else, that's like square one of what you should do. Not as the thing you do whenever you can't do anything else. It's where we should start. I'll read this and then I'll pray and we'll end. But while I was gone this weekend, I posted this. I felt very confronted by it. Prayer gives us the power to go places we cannot go physically, and the ability to do things that we cannot do in our own strength through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit and the will of the Father and to the glory of Christ. When we can't do it, God can. And by praying, we're inviting God to do something that we cannot do. And is there any better thing to do than that? One of my buddies, Shane Frederick, he's a big wrestling fan. He's like, we got to learn to tag in God because we're special. And we should probably tag in God when the moment the bell rings. There's a way of living and being that we need to necessarily make it higher than what it's been. Church as it has been has not gotten very many of us very far. It's definitely nowhere close to the kind of community that God has called us to. So that's my little sermon. Let's pray. God, we can't do this on our own. We read scripture and we see that they definitely didn't do it on their own. But Lord, because you came and dwelt amongst us, because you paid the price for our sin on the cross, because you rose into heaven and seated at the right hand of the Father, and because you sent your Holy Spirit to dwell within us, to take our hearts of stone and make them hearts of flesh. Lord, you have given us the power to live as your body. May we take that call seriously. And Lord, may we do all that we can to live that way, to your glory, so the world sees you in us. And they want your life, your love, and your forgiveness as well. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all. We will see you next week for Leviticus chapter 8.